What's up, guys? Another episode here. You're coming across the Crappie Connection. You got myself, Justin Berry.
Brad Chappell here.
And we come here all the way to Oklahoma, and we got here Gary Rowe. Gary, welcome, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. We're going to go over a lot with the itty-bitties of the Bobby Garland stuff, real small profile baits.
You know, how to use them, when to use them, and, you know, really dive into why do you choose these small little baits to crappie fish so much with. And I think that's something that a lot of crappie fishermen just aren't utilizing yet, and I'm probably one of them.
A lot of people don't. I mean, they look at the bait and they think it's going to catch all small fish.
Right.
But what kind of clued me into it is when I first started crappie fishing, they always said in the wintertime you need to use a little bitty bait. And, and then when Bobby Garland come out with the itty bit, and they got so many colors that it just covers the whole gambit, you know, dirty water, clear water, and everything. I said, man, I got to have some of them. So I used them the first time in the winter, and I done, you know, really good with them. And I got to thinking about, you know, bass fishermen used to be big baits all the time. That's all they threw.
Right, for a big fish.
Big fish and all that.
Right.
And shaky head come in and Ned rig come in, and a lot of them kind of stayed away from them. But now, if you watch these bass fishermen, they're throwing them all the time, and they're catching good fish with them. So I started experimenting in the spring with them and in the summertime with them, and I learned that they bite these things year round.
Year round they do.
Year round. And a lot of times you got to let the crappie tell you, you know, what kind of mood they're in. If they're in a kind of a negative mood, this bait really excels, because that's, you know.
So on a hard bite, you would say, you know, definitely get out there and throw one of these little bitty baits on there.
Yeah, yeah. I've had times that I've pulled up on structure and be loaded with crappie, and I've thrown baby shads or even 3-inch baits, and the fish not even react to it.
Really?
Turn around and put an itty bit on and catch them every cast.
Now, how many techniques do you use with the itty bitties?
Actually, I do two. I do a single itty bit with a split shot, and then in open water, like if I find them on a ledge or just out swimming chasing shad, I'll do a double rig, and I'll use a 16th ounce on the top jig, and I put the itty bit on the bottom. And what it does, when you pitch it out or when you drop it, that 16th ounce always beats it down, and then you got this little jig.
A little sway to it.
And does a little pendulum, and a lot of times that real slow will trigger that fish to bite.
That's awesome.
And most of the time, I'm going to say, you know, 80–90% of the time, when I do catch them double rigging, it's on the little bait.
You catch them year round using them, right?
Yeah.
Is there a particular month that you would say that, you know, definitely get out there and try the itty bits?
January and February is real good in the wintertime. And right now, July, August, September.
So kind of with the coldest part of the year
And the hottest.
And the hottest.
Right.
You know, crappie fishing, that kind of goes back in my theories, is, you know, the wintertime and the summertime are pretty much a lot of the same techniques. You might slow down more, of course, in the winter. And the summer you're going to speed up, but, you know, they're going to be pretty much in the same areas of the lake.
Yep.
And, you know, go back and try some of the same techniques you do in the wintertime and the summertime to come back and catch them even.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people, you know, in the summertime, they think these fish are going to be really deep because it's hot. And there are shallow fish all the time. Wintertime, and, you know, shallow is relative to the water clarity. I mean, it could be like 10 killers, real clear, and shallow there's 10 foot.
You know, like colors, which, do you have a particular color that you like? Let's say with Fort Gibson, I know that's probably what your home lake you would consider.
Yeah.
What would be your best color for fishing Fort Gibson day in and day out?
On the itty bit, I throw the bone with the chartreuse tail, probably a huge percentage of the time.
And that's the little slab slayer.
Right. It's it's kind of like this slab slayer right
You're going to show it for them real quick.
And this one here, this is a good dirty water color, but Gibson is usually semi-clear, so that bone and chartreuse is real good.
Speaking, we was talking earlier when we went messing around fishing today. You got the Garmin Live Scope.
Right.
You fish dirty water.
Right.
And you were saying even with the itty bitties, how far them fish come away
It's
run up to it.
unbelievable.
Go ahead and explain that. Tell a story on that real quick.
I was at Eufaula this year, and I was fishing the itty bit, and I was in a school of crappie, and you can actually see this itty bit, and you can see the sinker or the split shot on that live scope, and I watched the fish come from at least 10 feet.
In dirty water.
In dirty water, you couldn't see 3 inches down, and flew over there and like a jerk rod out of my hand. And I was in fish, but he come from the side all the way over and grabbed it. So he was, how they see it in that dirty water or sense it, I don't know.
Many years of evolution, huh?
Yeah.
That's how they eat.
Yeah.
And I've caught them on Fort Gibson. I caught one last year in 37 foot deep on the itty bit.
37. I remember you telling me that today. 37 foot
37
deep.
foot deep, and I've never caught a crappie that deep on Fort Gibson.
Wow.
But I saw them, and I thought, I'm going to try them, and sure enough, they reacted to that bait.
I'm sure a lot of people's asking too, what size hooks and what size jig heads do you usually typically throw for the itty bitties?
Typically, I throw the 64th and the 48th ounce. And I can't really tell a whole lot of difference in them as far as the rate of fall because they're so little. I'm sure there is some difference, but I mean, me personally, I can't. The fish can see it, but I can't. But I always throw those two sizes. And then sometimes I'll throw this one here. It just depends on the depth of the water. This one here is a good jig, and it's a little bit bigger than what I normally throw, but this works well too. And the reason I use a split shot on it is just because the jig's so small, and if I have to get down,
Can feel it too.
and it gives you a better feel for it. So. And sometimes on that live scope, the fish come up to the split shot too. So.
I've been hearing that a lot.
Yeah.
Have you experienced that, Brad?
Absolutely. I've seen them hit the lead.
I haven't done it yet. I haven't pulled the trigger and experienced that yet. I'm behind a little bit on that.
Oh, you gotta get a live scope.
Yeah. Go ahead. A lot of people don't know how to, you got a specific way you bait it, right?
How do you rig it?
Right.
Yeah, so why don't you show us how you rig yours
Okay.
for everybody right in front of that GoPro.
Always come through the top of the head here, and I will bring it down. You want there's a bottom and there's a top, and the bottom is you'll see the difference in it right there, but I'll bring it out the bottom of that hook, right about where the chartreuse meets the black. And then I'll just work it up on that bait keeper.
Man, that's one small bait.
And
Itty bitty.
yep, and then this is your bait. And like I say, a lot of people think, well, we're going to catch little fish today, but I actually won a tournament last year on Lake Hudson and needing 3 big fish, and I saw the fish on the live scope but couldn't get them to react, and I went to the itty bit, caught all 3 of them, we won the tournament. So,
Really?
yeah.
Imagine real pressured fish too. That itty bit would probably shine.
Yep.
Where you got a bunch of boats fishing in one area and they're getting to see tons of minnows or tons of big jigs, and you throw a itty bitty up out there, and I can see why they would hit it then.
Yeah. Well, I even talked to a biologist here in Oklahoma, and I was telling him about this itty bit.
Yeah.
And he said, that a high percentage of what the crappie eat is small.
Right.
A lot of people think, they're going to chase the shad around, but while they're in that brush or on some type of structure, they're going to eat what's available. And a lot of times it's little bitty baits and stuff, and they said a huge percentage of what they eat is the size of that itty bit.
Right, an inch.
Yeah. And so after the first year, I will not go to a lake in Oklahoma without that tied on. I've got it ready to go all the time.
Do you have a particular theory? I know we ask a lot of these guys on color selection. Do you try to match up the jig head color with the jig bodies, or?
Actually, I contrast them. I like this one right here, you with a pink and a black and chartreuse.
Yeah, so 3 colors.
It gives you a 3 color. If I'm throwing, say, a pink jig, I'm going to throw like a white head or a blue head or something like that to contrast it with it. I don't know. I really do feel like it makes a difference sometimes. You hear people say color don't make a difference, and you hear people say color does make a difference. Well, to me, color is a confidence.
Yeah, confidence.
I've got the baits that I like to use, and I catch them on. And there are times that color does matter, and then there's a lot of times that color don't matter.
Right.
If they're on the feed,
Yeah.
you can drop anything down there. So, but as long as you get it in front of them, they're going to eat it.
So if you had to pick your 5 top colors that, well, somebody said, well, you're never going to get another pack of jigs, and you only got 5 different colors to go by, what would be those 5 colors that you would get and made sure that you always had with you?
Number one would be pearl white.
Pearl white.
Pearl white would be my number one pick. Then the bone and the chartreuse would be my number 2 pick. Black and chartreuse is a good color, especially for dirty water. And black chartreuse is actually good on Gibson too. And a black and pink
Black and pink.
is a real good color for dirty water and early.
Got one more.
Oh man, I tell you, you put the pressure on me.
So many,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Garland's got so many baits. Probably, I would go with probably either a solid chartreuse, maybe that moon glow color, or clips or something. I can't remember the name of it exactly, but a solid chartreuse would be a good bait.
Do you throw a lot of scent on there when you use them, or when do you use scent at all?
Yeah, I do. I use it slab jam sometimes, and I don't use it all the time. With that live scope, I can see these fish react, and if they're not reacting to the bait, I'll put some slab jam on and see if that makes them react to the bait. If it doesn't, then I'll do a color switch or whatever. But if they get real finicky, I like to put some scent on it.
Got another question. What size line are you using to use these itty bits?
I use 6-pound fluorocarbon.
Fluorocarbon. Huh?
Yeah, and I use that exclusively on everything I use.
Why do you use fluorocarbon?
It sinks, and it's just so much stronger. I mean, you get 6-pound fluorocarbon, it's the same size as 4-pound line.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't know out there the fluorocarbon sinks and the mono pretty much.
And I would imagine that makes sense too. You know, using such little small weight, you need something that would sink to actually help get that bait down too.
Yeah.
Great point right there.
And like I say, and the strength of the, I mean, they call it 6-pound, but I think it's, you know, you'd about pull a boat with 6-pound
Yeah, it's
fluorocarbon.
pretty strong. You'd be surprised.
But I like the small diameter, plus you get that, you got the extra giddy up with it, you know, so.
It doesn't have any kind of give either. It's
No, this stretch is a lot less than what mono would be.
Right.
It's not as much, it's got more stretch than, of course, than what braid has. But,
right.
I don't use braid. I've got a lot of friends that use braid, and I'm actually probably going to experiment with some braid this year just to see if it's what I like or not. But
Giving everybody a good idea of crappie or knots, how big a fish have you caught with the itty bitty?
the biggest one I've caught weighed 2.8.
2.8?
Yeah.
And what about, have you caught any big bass, big catfish with them or anything?
I've caught catfish up to, I caught one this year on the itty bit that weighed, it was a blue cat, and I knew it was when I seen it on the live scope, but I dropped it in front of it. It weighed 9 pounds.
9 pounds?
Yeah. And I mean, as soon as it got in front of me, he ate it, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But you can't be afraid of using a little bait, because there are so many times that you can utilize a small bait and get the bites that you wouldn't get.
Yeah.
And you will have to weed through some small ones. I mean, small ones are going to eat smaller baits, there's no doubt about it. But I've caught numerous, fish, 1.5 to 2 pounds. You don't catch a lot of 2-pounders here, but I've caught a lot of good ones, what would be, people would consider tournament fish.
Right.
Get more back into split shots. How big of split shots do you use?
I use it's about a 1/16 ounce split shot. I like the ones that crimp down real tight, because a lot of times they slide. So this particular style, they got some that's got
The ears.
little ears on it that you can put them on, take them off. I don't like them.
You don't like? Why don't you like them?
They don't grip that line very good.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they'll move up and down your line. If you set the hook, a lot of times you pull it in, and it'll be right.
How far you like to separate your bait? And
About 8 inches, 8 to 10
inches.
inches, and when you drop this in deep water, this little split shot's going to beat that jig down just like that double rig I was talking about. It won't be quite as dramatic, but you'll still get that little bit of swing and that slower fall from that bait. And a lot of times that slow fall is what triggers that bite.
Is there a time that you wouldn't put a split shot on there and just use the 1/64th instead?
If I was fishing maybe 5 foot or less water, if I get into any depth of water at all. I want to get it down there.
Mm-hmm.
And you lose so much feel with that light bait that, you know, if you're trying to work it around structure and stuff, you may not feel it, but with the split shot on there, you'll get it down.
Yeah,
there
you
and
can feel it.
Actually, you'll feel the brush with this
Yeah.
before you'll feel it with the hook. So
Now, is there any? I mean, a lot of guys out there, they like to talk about knots. Is there a special knot you like to tie using these itty
I
bitties?
use a loop knot exclusively on all my crappie jigs.
Once you got the line, I want you to give us a demonstration of show everybody on YouTube what a loop knot is. If you
Well,
don't know.
There's 100 ways to tie
Yeah.
a loop knot, but I have my way, and I'll just go through the eye.
You need your reading glasses.
I need more than my reading glasses.
It's kind of tough in this room.
It is, well, there we go. And I'll bring that line about, 6 or 7 inches. And the way I tie it, I saw y'all tie them today, is different, but I'll just grip it with my ring finger, my thumb, go around, and then I'll grab the line, and I've got the loop.
Yep.
And I'll just drop it through 2 or 3 times. You can do it any way you want to. And then I'll just work that loop down.
Yeah, work it down.
Work it down to the bait. You don't want a too big a loop. Actually, the smaller loop you can get, the better. And the reason I use a loop knot is because when you're fishing,
Yeah.
it keeps that jig like that all the time. If you tie direct, like with a Palomar, just the old fisherman's knot, and you get hung up or you catch a fish, a lot of times that jig, it'll pull that line up on top of the head right here, and then your bait is sitting in the water like this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. My theory with that as well.
So I go to the loop knot, and when you put a bait on it, it'll kind of sag a little bit, but when you hit that water,
Right.
it's going to go perfect.
I noticed the same thing once I started really getting into these demo takes at Bass Pro Shops. You know, and you put that bait in there and you have that loop knot, automatically it's going to fall and it's going to sit level.
Yeah, and
Every time.
when it goes down, it's got the head going down. When it comes up, it's got the head coming up. You know, it's got that natural
That-
presentation
yeah.
of it
Right,
for
that
sure.
movement.
And then when you do have it like this, and a lot of people, the way I jig it, you know, what they call jigging a jig, is a lot of people will jig up and down. I actually jig, I'll go from this position down and back up instead of up and down. And the reason I do that, I try to keep my baits above the crappie and let them come to the bait, because there's a lot of times if you get right on their nose, you're going to spook them. They don't like it, and they're looking up to feed all the time anyhow. So when I drop it, if I got that jig like this in the water, and I've got it, say, a foot above his head, waiting on him, if I jerk it here and then let it fall, I'm pulling it out of his strike zone.
Right.
If I drop it, it presents it to him, and I bring it back up, it stays in his strike zone the whole
That's a
time.
good point right there. Real good point.
I seen Gary today. Actually, we fished with Gary Dahlheim for a little bit, but I seen him shaking his pole, and I don't see too
He
many.
shook it?
He shook it side left to right.
Yep.
I never done that.
That was a new one for me.
They told me real quick, Gary, that you watch. See, other fishermen watch other fishermen because you was paying attention to what knot I was tying.
Mm-hmm.
So you let me know on that because, see, you know, it's just everybody pays attention of every other technique that every other fisherman has.
You can always learn.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned, Brian Young, me and him do a lot of fishing together, and he has taught me techniques that I've never tried before. And I introduced him to the itty bit this year, and he's excited about it. So he caught fish with it. So you're never too good to learn.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's always
Absolutely.
something, whether it's knot tying or baits or just presentation, there's always a new way to catch them.
Yeah.
What do you think, in my mind, and we've discussed this a bunch of too before in the show, is where do you think most guys fail when they go out there and are trying to learn to crappie fish?
Well, one thing they don't have is the confidence. When I go out, I know where I'm going to go, and I know what color I'm going to throw, and I know that color is going to catch them. There's no doubt in my mind when I go. It don't always happen, but,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
but I do have that confidence. I know when I put that bait in the water, there's a good chance I'm going to catch one. And people that hadn't fished much, they're kind of lost. They don't know. They're thinking, well, you know, I don't like this color, and they'll go through color after color after color, and they never are presenting that bait right. And one thing I do see a lot of people do that's just getting into it is using way too big a line.
Way too big a line. Like, how much line are they using?
Well, like 10 pounds.
Right.
On stuff like this?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Yeah, of course that line overpowers those baits. Now, dirty water, you can get away with like 10-pound fluorocarbon, which is about like 8 or 7-pound line. But in Fort Gibson water or 10-kilo water, you got to go as small as you can go, because that line is a big player on how that jig falls and how they react to it.
What about high vis versus clear? Well, if you're using fluorocarbon, I guess it's all pretty much clear.
Mine's clear. I think I've got a buddy that uses the high vis, and he uses it on Fort Gibson, and he catches fish with it. But to him, it's visible to him. He's older than I am, so I tell you, he's pretty old. So.
How old are you, Gary?
41? No,
Yeah.
59.
59, and you're still out there
Oh yeah, yeah. I love
doing
it.
your thing, huh?
Yeah, but he can see that line, and it gives him confidence to get those bites that, or see that bite. Because on the itty bit, I forgot that I was going to bring this up. A lot of bites that you get on the itty bit is you won't feel it.
You won't feel that pow.
No, you won't feel that thump. And when you go to pull it up or drop it, you'll either get slack in your line or you'll feel some resistance. You got to set the hook.
So a couple of them bites today, but where we was at, I didn't feel a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
I started, yeah, that's a good point there.
And you know, like on a baby shad or even a 3-inch bait, most of the time you're going to feel that big thump. But on these, I've caught numerous fish that I've never felt anything, never seen anything. But when I went to pull the bait up to move it or whatever, I felt that resistance.
Have you experienced that on live scope? Like, you know, like, he's got to have my bait. Is he on it? Let
Yeah.
me pull it up, see if he's on there, and he's on there.
Yeah, I caught one that you follow this year, and I watched him go down, and I thought, man, he's got that bait. And my line's, I see him swimming, and my line takes off with me. I never felt it.
Wow.
But if I'd have pulled up, I would have felt him. And these hooks, these little hooks, and I can't explain this, but they will get those fish in the top of the mouth, dead center almost every time.
Hardest part on the fish.
Every time. And I don't boat flip them because the hook's so small and it's pretty light.
Yeah.
You know, on the smaller ones I do, but the little ones I don't. But I'll go ahead and net the bigger fish because I don't know if it's going to hold that weight coming up. But I know it's got a hold of them. I don't lose hardly any fish with these baits. They usually, you don't catch them in the corner of the
They're pretty
mouth.
durable, as small as these hooks are.
Yeah, but you never catch them in the corner. You always catch them right dead center in the top, and it gets them good. So I've actually run several hooks trying to get the hook out.
Right.
So, but don't be afraid to use these because I've caught hundreds and hundreds of fish on these things when nobody else catch them on the bigger bigger baits and stuff.
I'm gonna start using them more. I've done it in the summertime a couple times, and I've caught good fish on it. But it's in the back of my mind, I always forget about it. You know what I mean? And just that's, I don't know. If you're not confident in it, you won't try it. But in the same breath, you need to try new stuff.
You
There's
know,
nothing wrong with it.
I think that's where most crappie fishermen, and I'm just as guilty as anyone out there, is, you know, they say, well, you know what, I tried the 3-inch bait today, and
Yeah.
you know, they're just not biting, and they give up. And I think that's the part with crappie fishermen that are really good at it, is they've learned through the years that you keep trying enough things and changing up enough weights to colors to, you know, anything about it, and they usually get them. And that's really where the very elite crappie fishermen getting how they get there is, my mind, is keep trying, and from very small baits to whatever.
Well, like that tournament I was telling you about on Hudson, we looked at those fish for 20 minutes, and I mean, we dropped baby shad on them, and we had caught them and caught them and caught them that day.
Yeah.
And they would not react to those baits. And so I just hit spot lock on my Ultrex, and I sat down, and my partner asked me, so what are you doing? I said, I'm going to put an itty bit on. I said, I guarantee you, if they're going to bite, they'll bite it. I put it on, dropped it down there, and as soon as it got to, one of them grabbed it, and it weighed 198.
Was it a good like it,
Yeah,
like
I mean, he hit it.
it wasn't no light
And
body?
then the second one I dropped on, he wouldn't react to it at first, but then I seen him move. And once he moved over, I told my partner, I said, he'll bite now. And I caught him the next bite, or next drop, and it was a 174.
Wow.
So, but if it wasn't for the itty bit, we wouldn't have won that tournament because they would not bite that bigger bait. Now, there was probably 100 other crappie on that log, and you could catch them every cast, but they wasn't what you'd call a tournament fish. And we just had to do that change. We changed the color up too, so the fish got to see a smaller bait in a different color, and they reacted to
How many
it.
colors you go through on them fish?
Just two.
Just 2
Yeah,
colors?
yeah. I went with the original bait, the first one. I caught that first one, and then the second
What
one.
are you laughing, Brad? What are you gonna say?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it all out of them. I'm asking what color for everybody can go buy it now.
Well, I was throwing the bone in the chartreuse to begin with, and then I caught the first one on it, and the second one wouldn't react to it, so I switched to a black and pink, and first drop I caught him on it. So I'm not afraid I'll switch colors in a heartbeat. If they quit on me, I'll.
How many
I'll
colors
switch.
have you went through? Or since you got the live scope, you can actually dial in on them more. How many colors have you went through before you caught that fish? Have you ever counted it? I mean, has it been like 5 or 10?
Well, I was at Eufaula last week, and I was fishing some standing timber, and I found some pretty good fish. And I went through, I know at least 10 colors. And finally, I went to the color they call mayfly.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good color right there.
And the first drop, after I changed colors, and I started catching them.
You know,
So,
crappie are so picky, I guess that
Yeah.
is the term.
Yeah.
You got to do that kind of thing,
And these were nosed up to the woods, so I knew they was kind of in a negative mood.
right?
When those fish get up real close to that timber, they're hard to catch.
Yeah,
Most of the time they're just sitting.
I want to make sure everybody heard that. He went through 10. He seen one's live scope. They wasn't hidden. He went through 10 different colors before he got the fish to hit.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you last time I went through 10 different colors knowing there's a fish down there before I can get it to
I don't
hit.
know. I can't say that. Back of my boat looks like a. If they're not biting, I will throw every color in the rainbow
Yeah.
at them
Yeah.
before I finally say, you know what, they're not gonna bite. But the back of my boat looks like a bag of jigged Skittles or something that's blew up because there's colors everywhere.
It looks like a stroller or a nuclear bomb just
pretty
dropping
much.
back your boat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And all my buddies out there, and they can testify to that.
Yeah, it's awesome.
There's a color generally they're going to buy, even if they're in a negative mood. The one thing I will say, don't put it, like I said earlier, don't put it on their nose with that live scope if they're in a negative mood, because they'll just swim off.
It's a good point right there.
If they're, I'll usually, I'm going to say about a foot above them, and then there's a lot of times you just got to hold it. And don't move it, don't jig it, don't do anything. Just hold it and just sit there and wait them out, and you'll see them ease up, and then they'll get it. And then sometimes they want the swing in, you know, like pitching it out,
Yeah,
and let it swing in
a little
front.
sway
and catch
to it.
You just got to let them tell you. And since live scopes come out, I've learned so much about fish.
Yeah, all theories are out the window.
Oh, it is. I mean, I never dreamed that there was fish swimming in 4 foot deep and 20 foot of water, just swimming all over the place, and they are.
You know, one thing that amazed me, and it really took me about 20 minutes at the max, maybe 20 seconds, but how many fish are in the lake?
Oh.
There's just
Yeah.
thousands of them.
First time I seen when we was down at when Brad guy was down at the res, and I was like, I don't even know what depth to set my rods at.
Yeah, they're
You
everywhere.
know, they're everywhere.
Just
Charlie's
put the pole
everywhere.
out. Yeah.
I'll tell you something about those fish that are just roaming, and if I can talk about Eufaula on that, and Brian will talk a lot about that later on today with you, but those fish in March and April in the pre-spawn, they're out there roaming in the channels, and you'll see them anywhere from 4 or 5 foot down to 20 foot down. And the ones that are biting are those ones that are going to be 10 foot or less.
10 foot or less.
The most active fish are in the highest water.
They're up there feeding.
I totally
Spoiler
agree.
alert,
I've
10 foot or
always agreed
less.
with
Yeah.
that one.
10 foot or less
And
and
if you get them down there at 15, 16 foot, they're really hard to catch. But you can drop this itty bit sometimes. You can downsize from a 3-inch bait down maybe a baby shad or even the itty bit and go a little bit deeper, and sometimes you get them to bite. But most of the time we're looking for 10 foot or less.
Yeah, that's one thing, years ago, whenever I go side scanning, and of course we're saying live
live
scope,
scope.
that I would always want to target, and then for the guys that don't have live scope, because everybody don't have it.
Yeah, that's me. I don't have one yet.
Justin. But one of the things that I really try to key in on whenever I'm scanning and looking at sonar are the highest fish that I'm marking. Say if I'm in 30 foot of water and I see fish at 6 to 8 foot, and then I see some down at 15 and 20, 25, I always try to fish for the most upper portion of the fish.
Right.
And I tell you where I learned that from.
Go ahead and tell us, Brad.
Are these tanks down here, or any of these
Oh,
aquariums? Even the house, I used to have a 150-gallon tank, but as my fish, and you would get ready to feed them,
Yeah.
and you watch them out here at these tanks, they're all on the top.
Right.
They're looking for food. They're actively looking for food, and that's what my
You
mindset.
learned it from your seminars.
From seminars, and like I said, even just watching, a fish tank.
Yeah.
Fish are fish, depending, they all want to eat something.
There's a reason that they're up here shallower,
Yeah.
and that's to feed.
They're actively feeding. So there's a little tip, as you would say, spoiler alert, I guess you would.
Yeah, that's my good.
Even on brush piles, the same thing.
Yeah, right.
You'll see fish in a brush pile, and you'll see some down deep in the pile, and you'll see some that are shallow, suspended.
On the top end.
Those ones that are suspended, you're going to catch those fish.
Now, Gary, you do seminars here, right?
Yeah.
What do you pretty much cover for everybody to know? What do you cover for?
What we doing now?
Yeah.
Well, I talk a lot about the itty bit, but I do some seasonal patterns for
That's
northeast Oklahoma, and and what works for me, and I just try to pass that on to these people, because most of the people that come to seminars, they're here to learn.
Absolutely.
They want to know,
Yeah.
and they see what's going on, especially in the tank. We put itty bits on, and of course cut the hooks off, and those fish, even the big bass, react to them. I've had the biggest bass in the tank here in Broken Arrow grab that itty bit and just take off swimming, and I'm sitting there putting pressure, he'll finally let it go. But those fish, like you said, are up in the upper column of it, and I actually use this tank as a barometer, because they have the brush pile in it.
Right.
And then if I'm up here, I'll look and see where those fish are positioned, and if they're sucked up tight to that wood.
They need to put us a live stream on there for you to.
Yeah.
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 Exactly.
But if you'll watch them, and you'll come up here some days, the crappie will be out on the outside, and they're edge feeders anyhow. So if you find crappie on the edge of some type of structure, those fish are going to bite. But if they're sucked up tight, they're in that negative mood. And a lot of that has to do with what the pressure is going on, the storms or whatever.
So you like fishing pre-storms or post, or?
I like pre. Seems like it's better for me. Post is where this itty bit comes in. Is when they're kind of real negative,
If you had to choose 1 month out of the year to crappie fish, now I don't know what it would take for that to happen necessarily, but if you only had to choose 1 month, what month out of the year would it be for you to go crappie fishing?
October.
October. Out of the spawn. That's
Because of size-wise or numbers?
Both.
Both.
Fort Gibson in October, the fish will get in 2 and 3 foot of water, just like it would in a spawn. When that water temp hits those 60s, those fish get up shallow. The shad move in shallow. You got to follow the bait fish.
Yeah.
But I've actually caught fish on Gibson in 2 foot of water and watched them eat the bait.
Wow.
And pull it down like a big lay down, and just drop it down and pull it, and you can see your bait and watch them come up and be big, big crappie, nice crappie.
That's awesome.
So, but they get that fall feed going in October, and they'll transition during that month from that real shallow to the deeper water. But they're easy to follow, because if you're catching them shallow and you go back the next day and they're not shallow, you know that they've moved. And I've actually got 2 places on Fort Gibson that have laydowns that start in 2 foot of water and go to 25 foot. And I can go to those and I can see where those fish are positioned at. So it takes all the, that it eliminates water for me.
Yeah.
So if I go up there and they're all up there on that root ball, I know they're on the bank. And if I go up there and they're on the end of it, then I know they've moved deep. So I had last year, well, actually 2 years in a row, I was catching them real shallow, and I went back to catch them, and they wasn't there. And so I went to that big one tree, and it was all positioned in about 20 foot, and dropped down there, and the first one I caught was over 1.5 pounds. And I thought, okay. So I started running my deeper piles, and I had a great day, you know. But
Pattern within a pattern, as Big T would say, wouldn't he?
yeah,
Yeah, we preach
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah.
yeah. It's the little stuff that help you catch the big numbers, you know. And live scope will let you catch big fish, and it'll let you catch big numbers. But if I'm out wanting fish to clean, I want the 10 to 12 inches to clean, and I'll go look for that. If I'm looking for big fish, I'll go to individual structures like a standing timber
Yeah.
or stuff and look for those bigger fish.
Huh.
So, but brush piles, if I want to go catch, the limits on Gibson's 10 inches long, I'll go to a brush pile and catch me 15. So, and you'll get some big ones doing that too, but live scope's fun for tournaments because you can actually, you don't mess around. You catch a big one, you look down there, there's no more big ones, you leave and you go find another one.
Right.
So, but you can actually, after a period of time, you can look at those fish on live scope and you know if they're big or not.
Yeah.
And it took me about 2 weeks to figure
At least
it
I was
out.
going to ask you the next question. Was it 2 weeks to
About
dial
2
in
weeks, yeah.
how big they are?
Yeah, and then I started seeing these bigger and brighter, you know, fish down there, and I'm thinking, you know, oh, that's a catfish or something. You know, I'm thinking, because you get in your head, you know, these crappie are small and they're all congregated. Well, I've actually seen the little ones down there drop down there and be perched this long, you know. And I'm
Really?
thinking, well,
Well, if you can see them, your jigs and everything else on, you know.
Yeah, your
Yeah.
line.
and I've got my live scope set up in 2 foot increments on the distance out. So if I get a fish inside that 2 foot and it almost fills that screen up or that square up,
Yeah.
I know it's a big one. So,
Good point as well.
yeah.
Good point as well.
Good
One-
little tip.
And you can do 5 foot increments, but it depends on the distance that you're shooting forward.
Right.
So, I've seen catfish out there in 5 foot increments fill up almost 2 of them.
Oh, goodness. I bet so. I bet so for sure.
But
Well, I think our time is almost out. Is there anything else you want to add?
try it. Try these itty bits because you will be amazed on what they will catch.
Yeah.
They'll catch good fish, and I don't, you know, it don't bother me to catch a little fish. I mean, it's still fishing.
Still catching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're still
you're right,
catching.
you're
and-
right.
But if you stay with it, you'll catch some big fish with it. Like I said, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have won that tournament. So
That's awesome.
proof's in the pudding for me.
That's
so.
right. That's
There you go.
right. Barry, anything else you want to add?
Man, just appreciate your time, Gary, and enjoyed it, and looking forward to fishing some more.
Yeah, me too. Well, Gary, it's been a pleasure, man.
Thank
Yeah.
y'all.
I'm gonna show everybody too, real quick, Justin, that we now have the Crappie Connection stickers available. You can message us on
Oh, yeah.
Facebook and everything else to kind of check them out.
Showed on a little GoPro here. Check that out for sure. Gary, that's yours. You can have.
Appreciate it.
Other than that, guys, I'm Justin Barry.
Brad Chappell here.
All right, we'll see y'all later.
Holla.
Place I'll always remember. Cabin on the lake and a fishing pole. Forever here I'll rest my soul. I can feel my way